Hello, everyone, and welcome to this session here, which is our hustings for the role of police and crime commissioner in Hertfordshire. I'd like to, this hustings, as of others we've done in the past, is being organized by the Watford African Caribbean Association. A particular welcome to the four candidates who are standing for election to this role. And in that case, we're talking about Jonathan Harsh-Edwards, Matt Fisher, Tom Platter, and Sean Prendergast. Welcome to all of you, and hopefully we're going to have an interesting conversation. The election, in fact, is next week, Thursday. So this is your first and last opportunity to hear these people speak to you, I suspect, before the election is take place. They're taking place alongside the local councils, district council elections that are also happening next week, Thursday. By way of context, the role of the Police and Crime Commission is to be, it says by the association, is to be the voice of the people and hold the police to account. They're responsible for the totality of policing, and they must do the following: secure, efficient, and effective police for their area, appoint the chief constable and hold them to account for running the force, and if necessary, dismiss them, set the police and crime objective for their area through a police and crime plan, set the force budget and determine the precept, continue contribute to the national, international policing capability set out by the Home Secretary, and finally bring together community safety and criminal justice partners to make sure local priorities are joined up. That's from the Association of Police and Crime Commissioners. So that's the context in which these elections are taking place and these candidates are coming forward. The role is one that is an elected one, and they serve for a period of 4 years. They're reasonably well paid. Whoever is successful will get about 78,000 per annum. So you know that they're not volunteering to work for you. So on to tonight. So what we're going to do tonight, just to explain the process, we're going to ask each of the candidates to address us and to set out what their key priorities are. We're going to do this without interruption. And at the end of 5 minutes, we're going to ask that person to stop, and then we're going to ask the next person, and so on. Whilst they're speaking, whilst I say we won't interrupt, you can always put your questions and comments in the chat. What we'll do then is to, once we've heard from all four candidates, we will then open up for questions. We're going to hear from the candidates initially in alphabetical order, but what we will then do, once the questions come, we will have an opportunity for each of the candidates to actually answer a question first, so that it's fair and you're not just hearing the same voice first time every time. We're going to ask them to be succinct in their response to the questions, and ideally not take more than a minute, so that we can actually get through as many questions as we can. And then after that, as I say, we'll ask them to sum up. What I'll ask you to do in the first instance, when you're asking questions, please ask questions that is relevant to each of the candidates. In other words, it's not really about what your party's position is, and then you're asking, well, sorry, you can ask that a question along those lines, but it isn't, it really needs to be questions that we can equally put to the candidate to improve our understanding of what it is that they are proposing to do. And by asking questions that they can all answer, we're then in a position to compare the responses and help us to decide who might be best to represent us when the time comes. So that's by way of a bit of context. Any questions from anyone regarding anything that I've said so far before I formally invite the first speaker to speak? No? Okay. So thank you all again for joining. I see a few more people have joined us. So please get your questions together so that we can get a dynamic session. Just before I was the first speaker to say, I've heard as chair of the associate, the Watford African Caribbean Association, people have come to me at various times with policing concerns. Here's an opportunity to hear what these people are proposing to do. They're the people with a strategy going over the next 4 years. So don't be afraid to ask them any questions, because actually we want to make sure that they are going to be there effectively representing us, the people. Okay, so since there aren't any questions, I'm going to now ask in that alphabetical order I've mentioned, last name first. So Jonathan Ashhead was, I'm going to ask you, Jonathan, welcome you and ask you to address us for no more than 5 minutes. And I'm going to put the timer on this. So your 5 minutes starts now.
Well, thank you very much, and good evening, everyone, and thank you for inviting us all here this evening to share our plans with you and to hear more of your views, which is incredibly important because, as you've outlined, Clive, the key role of the Police and Crime Commissioner is to listen to the public and to be the public's voice in local policing, and to use that to set the policing priorities for the county, to set the almost £300 million a year policing budget for Hertfordshire, and to hold the Chief Constable and his team to account for delivering. And before I moved to Hertfordshire, my experience is really closely aligned with all of those responsibilities. I've led a council in local government. I've established an education trust in my professional life. I've commissioned services for disadvantaged groups, and I've set and overseen multi-million-pound public service budgets. So all of the things that the Police and Crime Commissioner will have to do on behalf of the people of Hertfordshire are all things that I have experience of doing either in public service or in my professional life. Now, Hertfordshire has had a Police and Crime Commissioner, David Lloyd, who is standing down at this election, and we've made considerable progress in keeping Hertfordshire safe and getting more police into communities over the last few years. Hertfordshire now has more police officers than at any time in the constabulary's history. There are hundreds more police officers in Hertfordshire than there were in 2010. Every single district in Hertfordshire has a dedicated local policing team, and that's really important. And it's really important that we continue the progress on getting more police serving our county. Secondly, safer streets. Hertfordshire is one of the safest counties in England and Wales. It doesn't always feel like it, but it is when you look at all of the data. And we need to keep it that way and make sure that people feel safe, and there is a really good, strong response when crime does happen in people's communities. And we also pay lower tax for policing than many other parts of the country. Hertfordshire residents pay the fifth lowest policing precept in the country out of the 43 police forces in England and Wales. And that's partly because a huge amount of work has been done to ensure that police forces are working together, Bedfordshire, Cambridgeshire, Hertfordshire, together to be efficient, to procure stuff sensibly, to deliver value for money, and make sure that the money that comes from taxpayers for local policing is being spent on people's priorities on the front line. So we need to build on that progress. And there are 6 things I want to just very briefly share with you as my plan if I'm elected as your Police and Crime Commissioner. The first is preventing crime. The one thing that victims of crime have in common is wishing that they'd never been a victim in the first place. And we need to prevent crime, disrupt criminality, and look at how we can tackle hotspots of offending in communities to really nip issues in the bud. Secondly, we need to tackle high impact crimes that have a huge impact on people and communities, even though sometimes they're less visible. Fraud and domestic violence are some of the biggest crime types in Hertfordshire. They're not crimes that necessarily happen out on the street. They're often crimes that happen in people's homes, but they are hugely damaging to people, and we need to make sure that they are being addressed and tackled. Thirdly, responsive policing. We need to have a really robust response to antisocial behaviour and neighbourhood crime. And under me as the Police and Crime Commissioner, we will ensure that home burglary gets a police response and not just a crime. Fourth, supporting victims. There are really good quality victim services funded by the Police and Crime Commissioner in Hertfordshire. We need to build on those. And I want to focus on improving detection rates if elected, because victims want to see justice done. And that's what I will champion as the Police and Crime Commissioner. Fourthly, we need to keep the county safe. Hertfordshire is a great place to live and work. My other half is Hertfordshire born and bred, and we've made it our home. And we need to have safe town centres that people can go about their business without fear of crime. And we need to build on the work that's already been done. Getting Watford Police Station, for example, closer into the town centre has had a huge difference, a positive difference in terms of policing being able to deal with issues in the town centre. And finally, listening to you, it is truly about listening to the community's views, making sure that the public's views are heard in local policing, and the police are then empowered to deliver on people's priorities. And I think that second bit is also incredibly important. And what you will get from me is someone who believes in effective, transparent, responsive policing without fear or favour to ensure that we all live in a safer county. Thank you very much.
That's 5 minutes. Thank you, Jonathan. And just to remind people, do make a note of your questions, put them in the chat, or you can put your hand up in due course if you make a note of it. Okay, so that's Jonathan, who's your Conservative candidate. So now, secondly, for his 5 minutes is Matt Fisher from the Green Party. So welcome again, Matt, and over to you.
Thank you, Clive, and good evening, everyone. As a Green District Councillor and the first Green Party PCC candidate for Hertfordshire, I may be seen as the political underdog, but my experiences and skills make me a credible agent for change. From my accolades as best sea cadet in Britain to serving as a special constable, my journey reflects a deep and long-standing commitment to service and community engagement. World-class military training, flying helicopters as a Royal Naval officer and training alongside Special Forces provided me with leadership skills and resilience. Completing ultra-endurance events like desert runs and triple Ironman triathlons built further my determination and commitment to excellence. Over the past 2 decades, I've built a contemporary world-class photo studio and brand. Through my lens, I've captured the diverse essence of humanity, engaging with individuals from various backgrounds and cultures worldwide. This immersive experience has deepened my ability to authentically convey and understand ideas, emotions, and beliefs. Additionally, my marriage to a Bengali Muslim, who happens to be a mental health nurse, granted me insight into diversity, shaping my approach to inclusivity and, of course, empathy. Now, so to my plan of transforming policing in Hertfordshire, neighbourhood policing involves strategically placing visible police officers to foster trust and compliance, creating safer, vibrant communities, and by deploying officers on bikes and foot and other means, we enhance visibility and accessibility, and that bridging divides and ensuring that safety and well-being of all residents through collaboration and trust building. Investing in our youth is paramount for shaping a brighter future for our community. Today's young people often struggle to find their place in society and determine their path in life. By providing strong leadership, inspiration, and avenues for talent to flourish, we can empower them to reach their full potential and become valuable contributors to society. Diverse and representative police force, reflecting our community's diversity, fosters inclusivity and trust. Our police force will comprise officers from various backgrounds and experiences, allowing us better to understand and serve the needs of the residents of Hertfordshire. Focused crime prevention, targeting specific crimes with proactive measures, addresses root causes, and create safer environments. I'll prioritise crimes such as knife crime, personal robbery, residential burglary, violence against women and girls, drugs, antisocial behaviour, rural and wildlife crime, and emerging cyber and online crimes. Through targeted patrols and community partnerships, education initiatives will address the underlying causes of crime and create safer environments for everyone. Combating violence against women and girls, we must adopt a zero tolerance stance towards all forms of violence against women and girls. This requires robust enforcement of existing laws and proactive intervention to prevent such incidents from occurring. Education plays a crucial role in fostering a culture of respect and equality, and by influencing education at schools and within community groups and charities, we can empower young people to recognise and reject harmful behaviours. Stop and search. Well, professionalism, transparency, and community involvement ensure fair and effective use of this tool. And while stop and search is crucial for maintaining public safety, concerns about bias and misuse persist. Through robust officer training, accountability mechanisms, and community dialogue, we can ensure that it's fair and respectful application while upholding individual rights. Road safety and transport. Combining enforcement, education, and prosecution creates safer roads and transport systems. We must address issues such as speeding, reckless driving, dangerous parking, and irresponsible behaviour amongst cyclists and scooter riders. Strengthening enforcement measures, investing in public awareness campaigns, and enhancing prosecution efforts are essential steps in creating safer roads and transport. Firearms licensing. Investing in resources enhances oversight and regulation, and I would maintain investment in terms of the public safety and trust there. Supporting victims and rehabilitating offenders are essential components of creating a safer and more just society. Victims deserve comprehensive support services to aid in their recovery, while offenders, on the other hand, need rehabilitation programs to address their underlying causes of their behaviour and reintegrate them into society. By providing these services, we can break the cycle of crime and promote long-term positive outcomes for all members of our community. Investing in officer wellbeing and development is crucial for enhancing performance and job satisfaction. Our officers are our most valuable asset, and by providing ongoing training, support, and resources, we ensure they deliver top quality service to the community while feeling fulfilled in their roles. It's a really difficult time to be a police officer with morale being so low. And strategic priorities for policing. My approach would be guided by clear strategic priorities, clarity of vision, data-driven decision-making, people development, streamlining of processes, and technology integration. And then finally, inspiring leadership is about more than enforcing laws. It's about fostering positive change and building a sense of safety and inclusion. As leaders in law enforcement, our goal is to inspire our community, rallying together with warmth, engagement, and purpose to create a safer, more inclusive society for all.
Thank you, Matt. You went slightly over, but thank you. If we can try and stick with the time, please. Anyway, we will move on to our next speaker, who's Tom Plater. And Tom, your 5 minutes will start now. So the floor is yours.
Hi everyone, thanks for having me tonight. Unlike my fellow candidates, my background isn't in policing. In fact, I trained as a musician, getting a bachelor's and a master's degree from some of the top institutions in the UK. But my experience and my interest in policing comes from an experience that I had a couple of years ago, where I witnessed a racially aggravated assault over in Letchworth. And I called 999, and later in the paper there was an advert which asked people to contact the local police to give a statement, which I did. At the time, it took the police 3 weeks to come and take my statement. And when the police officer was there, and don't get me wrong, he was a fantastic police officer, he was really engaged, but he was having to listen to his radio the whole time. And at one point, had to close his laptop to get up and go to another incident before sitting down and taking the statement. And I just thought that if our police are in a position where they're not able to spend their full attention on taking statements, especially for a crime like that, then we've got a real problem here. I mean, And it is a challenging time for policing. If you look in Hertfordshire, last year there was a 35% rise in shoplifting. I think we're the fifth highest crime rate for antisocial behaviour in the country. And a recent study commissioned found that across the UK, around 50% of people have said that they haven't actually seen a police officer in their streets in the past year. And from all of my talking that I've been doing with people on the doors and getting out and listening to people around the county, the one thing they're telling me is that they never see their local police and they don't know why. And even the current Police and Crime Commissioner will admit that Hertfordshire Police has been underfunded. In his recent budget, even with the PUP uplift, the funding for Herts Police has not kept pace with the Bank of England inflationary target of 2% and remains £4.8 million lower than what it should be in real terms coming from the current government. So we need to find a way to really tackle the crime in Hertfordshire. My plan is I've got 5 missions to tackle crime in Hertfordshire. I'm going to be going after drug crime and locally organised drug gangs. I'm going to be looking at youth diversion schemes and getting kids off of our street and into programmes, which means that they won't commit crime in the first place. Or if they've committed that first bit of crime, you know, that first bit of antisocial behaviour or a little bit of criminal damage, that actually they're not criminalised straight away and they're not led into a life of crime, and they're led away from that so that they can rebuild their lives and live their lives to their full potential. I'm going to tackle violence against women and girls. And to do that, I'm going to immediately commission a review of police vetting practices across Hertfordshire. I'm going to copy the fantastic initiative by Kim McGuinness up in Northumbria, where they've put domestic abuse charity staff into the Force Control Centre in order to work directly with Force Control Centre staff so that people at the point of crisis can access the support they need. I'm looking at fly tipping and rural crime and how we can use agile resources to increase support for the rural operational support team. And I've got a real focus on retail crime and shoplifting, because these are shops that serve our local communities and serve as community hubs. And if they're under siege from criminals, that means our communities are under siege from criminals as well. But we can only do this together. I am committed that I cannot be a police and crime commissioner alone making decisions. If I'm making a decision about a community, that has to be done in conversation with that community to make sure that at the highest levels, there are Black voices in the room, that women are in the room talking and making those decisions alongside, because we cannot make decisions about our communities in Hertfordshire without involving our communities in those decisions. So what I've planned to do is to immediately commission an EDI review of Herts Police and look especially on how access to promotions works and special appointments within the police, whether this is for the firearms squad or going into detective. I've committed to running multi-faith panels around Hertfordshire, bringing together people of all faiths to talk about the issues in crime that are affecting them and to look at how we can go about making Hertfordshire a safer place for all of our communities. And I'm also, as I said, going to look at a complete review of vetting practices in Hertfordshire and focus on quickly implementing improvements so that we can weed out officers who are Wayne Cousin types and make our police force safe for Black officers and for female officers, so that we can make our communities safe for all the people of Hertfordshire. Thank you for having me tonight, and I'm looking forward to the debate.
Okay, Tom, thank you very much. Last but not least, in alphabetical order, Sean Pentecost. Welcome, Sean, and the floor is yours, and your 5 minutes is about to start.
Thank you, Clive, and really happy to be here tonight, so thank you for having me. The joys of going last, there's a lot of things that have already been said, which I do wholeheartedly agree with. I'll give you a little bit of background of my experience. So I was a police community support officer for just over 5 years, so I have a good grounding in operational policing. And then I went into housing, specialising in antisocial behaviour. So I've seen firsthand the severe impact that antisocial behaviour can have on people's lives. And that actually is one of my priorities, which I will talk about in a little bit. And then moving on, I'm also in a cabinet member for housing and environmental health at North Herts District Council. So I have that experience of leadership. and currently work as a trustee for Survivors Against Domestic Abuse, which is another one of my priorities. So moving on to my priorities, there's lots I could talk about around some of the other issues, which I'll be happy to cover when we get into the debate. But I want to focus on my 4 key priorities for Hertfordshire. So firstly, burglary and vehicle crime. So we have one of the worst clear-up rates in the country. We don't solve burglaries, essentially. On top of that, it takes police over 9 hours to attend a burglary in our county. And that's been a significant increase over a number of years. And that fits into my overarching priority, which is community policing. Community policing is absolutely essential in preventing and detecting crime. Unfortunately, the current Police and Crime Commissioner decided not to fill the PCSO posts for this year. We have seen a significant decrease in community policing in our county, which is essentially means that prevention is an empty slogan, and I want to fix that. Prevention is absolutely essential, but there needs to be action along with prevention. So community policing is absolutely essential and one of my at the heart of all of my priorities. Violence against women and girls. As a father of a young daughter, I want her to live on safe streets and be able to walk home at night without the fear of being abused or being any violence being committed against her. So, like Tom, I would also like to see domestic abuse support workers in control rooms at all times. That early intervention is absolutely essential in ensuring that victims get the support that they need. Equally, and something that hasn't been touched upon, but if we're to break the cycle of abuse, we need to continue to support and further enhance that support for perpetrator schemes if we're going to end that cycle of abuse. And then my other priority, unsurprisingly, is antisocial behaviour. And I can tell you why. There are pockets in our county that have higher than average rates for antisocial behaviour in the country. We can and must do better. How do we do better? Firstly, action. Officers have many, many tools available to them, quite low-level tools as well, to prevent antisocial behaviour. There needs to be a better use of them. But equally, prevention. We must invest in diversionary projects. We must get kids involved in schemes to take them off the streets. That involves community policing, that overarching priority. For example, there needs to be adequate funding for local authorities to make sure that they can put in place schemes to prevent antisocial behaviour, and that's something I'll be looking to change. So at the moment, we have a regrettable system where essentially local authorities have to apply to the Police and Crime Commissioner. He then may decide to give the money. It can take many, many months. There should be a forward-thinking plan where local authorities are given that money up front to put in place projects to put in place diversionary projects for the community. So, for example, I know that your organisation runs a local youth services called Thrive, I believe, and it's those types of groups that we need to adequately fund, so we can prevent antisocial behaviour from happening in the first place. Going back to violence against women and girls, just one thing I wanted to touch on that. In Hertfordshire, over 2/3 of violence is committed against women. On top of that, stalking and harassment now equates to 10% of all crime in Hertfordshire. We've got to do better than that. We have to do better than that. If we want to live in a safe county, we must do better. Again, that means adequate funding for support services. And again, community grants, going back to that, there's been a significant decrease in community grants. That flies in the face of prevention, and that's something I intend to change. We need to make sure that we fund communities properly. And then finally, because I appreciate I'm probably coming close to my 5 minutes, one thing that I think is absolutely essential, which has been missing over many years, is having a visible police and crime commissioner, someone who actually engages with communities. And I can commit to that. I want to commit to county-wide regular surgeries so the public can actually come and speak with their police and crime commissioner and have input into those plans, into those strategies. So actually, we are that listening voice for our communities. So thank you very much for having me tonight.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you. Okay, so now that we've heard from all of the speakers, and I'm sure you've listened carefully to what they've had to say, is now going to be over to you. I don't know, Marilyn, as often as the case, is helping me out with this, so I think she's going to try and deal with some of the questions in the chat. What I'm going to try and do is to alternate between questions in the chat and those that people might want to ask personally. So, Marilyn, shall we start with a couple of questions from the chat?
Okay. Yeah, so I'm going to go for Andrea's question first, and then we've got Joe, who also wanted, I believe he's going to come on camera. I then saw another from Kate, and then I can see Nick has got his hand up. So I'm going to start with Andrea's question. So Andrea said, if elected, what actions will you take to ensure Hertfordshire retains good officers, particularly from diverse backgrounds?
Okay, so as I said earlier on, what we're going to do is that we're going to give you each a minute. First question, Jonathan, you'll go with that first. Second question, we'll ask Matt, as I explained earlier on. So, Jonathan, you first. You got a minute on this one.
Thank you. Retention, as with any public service, is incredibly important because what you get with retention over time is experience, and experience means people who feel empowered to act. What that is about, first of all, is I think is an inclusive working environment where there is equal opportunity, where there are opportunities for progression, where there are opportunities for specialism, and where people feel that the organization invests in them and they want and is committed to them, and therefore they are able to make a commitment in return. Secondly, I think we need to recognize that the demands on policing are huge, including lots of non-policing demands. And so we need to make sure that actually other public services are playing their part in addressing the demand on policing. And thirdly, I think it's incredibly important that people say thank you. People go into services like policing because of a sense of public service and of public duty. And I think that's important to recognise. And I think that one of the jobs that the Police and Crime Commissioner can usefully play on behalf of the public is saying thank you to officers when they do really good work in communities, making sure there is that recognition, whether it is not just about the bashing door down things, but actually whether it's about supporting a really vulnerable person, whether it's about helping someone who perhaps hasn't had confidence in policing to report crime, whether it's a victim. I think that's really important too for leaders to say thank you and recognise achievement.
Thanks, Jonathan. Matt, same question.
Yeah, really to echo Jonathan's valid points there. I think it's about rewarding officers and making them feel valued. As I mentioned in my sort of spiel, it's a really difficult time to be a police officer. We're really up against it in terms of public perception and feeling valued, not only from a public perspective, but also from within the force as well. I think it's really taxing time by way of morale. And I think young officers, and let's not beat around the bush here, a lot of Hertfordshire, by way of the policing, police officers are quite young and inexperienced in terms of their policing. So I think they need to be valued, they need to be heard, they need to be supported, and mentoring schemes, I think, and really to bring about a really candid conversation as to what is going well, what is not going well, if they feel that they are being supported in their career. Not least of that, they take a lot of police officers take their work home with them, mentally, and I think some counselling and some support to unravel that would be helpful to alleviate the stresses that come with the job.
Okay, thank you. Tom, same question to you.
Yeah, again, to echo both some really good points there. I mean, I too think it's about officers feeling valued in the job, feeling safe and happy in the job that they're doing. But if we have got good officers leaving, then the first thing we need to find out is why they're leaving. And for the Police and Crime Commissioner to get a handle on that so that we can hold the Chief Constable to account and solve the problem. So what I would look to do is to keep an eye on what the turnover of officers is like, and also to request a breakdown of officers leaving by various protected characteristics. What I'd also like to see as well is exit interviews done with officers, and whether that's done with police officers or police staff, or whether that's done with people from the Police and Crime Commissioner's office, to really delve into the reason why good officers might be leaving the force, and to determine whether, you know, we're talking about national issues and national pressures, or whether there's something in Hertfordshire Police that is causing good officers to leave, that we can really hold the Chief Constable to account and sort out, so that we can keep those good officers who police our communities well.
Thank you. Thank you. Sean, same question. You're muted.
Thank you. That's an excellent question. The joys of going last. I echo everything that's been said. There's a couple of things I would add. Obviously, it's absolutely clear that everyone should feel valued, and that's really important. And I think some of Tom's ideas are very good in terms of having exit interviews. I'd like to see more support and mentoring for officers when they come into the role. But also, I think we need to create a police service that actually has meaning. So what I mean by that is their role is meaningful, and we put an end to sticking plaster policing. So actually police officers are more involved in their communities, so they can find longer term strategies to dealing with problems, because the safer the streets are, the more likely our officers are to stay, because it's a highly pressurized job. So let's put an end to sticking plaster policing. Let's invest heavily in community policing, and people will find there's more meaning to their role, and they're more likely to stay in the job.
Thank you very much for that, Sean. Okay, second question, Marilyn.
Okay, so we will go with the next question in the chat. Let me just pull that up. So this is from Kim Thompson from United We Rise UK. So Kim has said, how will you ensure you support grassroots organisations currently advocating and supporting our communities, for example, patrolling the streets to help keep children safe, assisting in de-escalating conflict and high-risk areas, and that includes helping parents, children and families involved with gang entanglement, mental health, domestic violence, violence against women, and the kind of main point here being that oftentimes people from these communities do not trust the police due to their past lived experiences. So I guess in a nutshell, what will you do to overcome some of that legacy bias, and how will you support those grassroots organizations?
Great question. In this case, we're now going to start with Matt to answer this first, and we'll carry on as said previously. So Matt, you've got a minute to respond.
Thank you, Clive. Thank you. Well, I think initially it's about candor. It's about accepting the fact that the police has had it wrong, or got it wrong, and quite considerably wrong at times. And I think a way in which to build that is from that point of honesty and respect, and saying, well, actually, let's build back together. Let's work collaboratively. And as I say, holding hands up to say, we haven't got it right. Tell us, inform us, advise us. What are you seeing? And it's eyes and ears on the ground again. It's very much about working with, it's not them and us. We're all in this bubble together of community. And I think so often police are seen as there's a binary that's like them and us. And I think if we just foster some strong ties within communities, we'll do a lot to build that trust back organically, and without all of the pomp and ceremony. It will be authentic. People will be seen out and about with neighbourhood policing. And I think creative thinking is probably a key way out of this as well. Literally asking the communities that we are keeping safe. We're not policing communities, we're keeping them safe. And I think it's about working with them and asking them what they want to see from us, where the loopholes are, where the traps are, and where areas of improvement are for all involved.
Thank you.
It's all about engagement. Yeah.
Sorry, thank you, Matt. Over to you, Tom. The same question.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I agree with Matt. Candor is absolutely key, and we know the police have got it wrong. And the first point of call is to acknowledge that. and to acknowledge the challenges in the relationship between the Black community and the police, because if we don't, then we're not going to be able to work together to fix that. And working together is absolutely the key. We have to make sure that Black voices are included in these decision-making rooms within the police, within all areas, whether that's with communities on the ground, whether that's within the senior decision-making with the PCC's office and the senior police officers. I truly believe that we cannot police in a bubble, and policing has to be done with input from our education services, from our healthcare services, from local community groups. And one of the biggest challenges we face is actually the communication and linking up local community charities in our area who do absolutely fantastic work with so many of our communities. But a lot of the time, they're doing very similar work and they might not know that each other exists. And actually linking, as a PCC's office, linking those charities and those third sector organisations up and making sure that we're working together with them to keep our community safer, for me, is absolutely key. And it's not just key for policing our communities and making our communities safer, but it's also key for building the positive relationships between our communities and the police that our police need in order to do the work that they need to do.
Thank you. And we're over to new Sean for you to answer that question.
Yeah, thank you, Clive, and thank you for the question. Excellent question. Echo a lot of what Matt and Tom have already said, but yeah, there absolutely needs to be more people from the Black community working within the force and being involved in those policing strategies. For example, one thing I would like to look at is when it comes to stop and search, we know that the Black community are disproportionately affected in that. How can they be more involved? So thankfully, and this is a really positive thing that Herts Police have done, they have a stop and search scrutiny panel. But I'd like to explore actually how diverse that panel is, so it accurately reflects the community it serves. So little things like that can make a big difference. Equally, like Tom and Matt have said, but it is absolutely essential, is the police do need to be more, what's the word I'm looking for, but they need to admit when they've got it wrong, hold their hands up, apologize, say sorry, and try and build that trust back. And then I go back to my original priority, but again, it's absolutely essential in building those relationships. In fact, it's key, and that's community policing. Those people who are going to go into those groups and actually build that trust up, find out what their concerns are, and take a long-term strategy to try and resolve those issues.
Thank you.
And actually really, really listen to those concerns.
Thank you, Sean. Finally, on that question, Jonathan?
Thank you. It's a great question, and there's absolutely loads to unpack in it. So I think a few key points for me. I agree with a lot of what's already been said. The police have made horrendous mistakes across the country over many years, decades. That's resulted in many communities, and including the Black community, having real issues in terms of trust and confidence in policing. And it's important that everything that policing does tries to make that better every single day. I think that in terms of one of the things that Police and Crime Commissioner can do is bring some transparency to that. And so if I'm elected, you will see that scrutiny and that holding to account publicly. It will happen in the public eye. And I think that ability for people to see that is important. In terms of the kind of community side of the question, I've had a lot of experience in my professional life working with small grassroots community organisations, and they are amazing without fail, because they're local, they're small, they're agile, they're very responsive to people's needs in a way that large organisations in often the public sector often aren't. And I think it's about recognising who the right response is. In many cases, some of the issues highlighted in the question don't actually need a police response, or a police response isn't the right response. Someone in mental health crisis, for example, almost always the wrong response will be a police car turning up. And sorry.
Thank you, Jonathan. I think time is up on that one. Sorry. Can we go to the next question, Marilyn?
So next we are going on camera. So Joe Innes, I believe you are ready and standing by. So handing over to you, and then we'll come to Nick, and then we have a question from Valerie. So Joe, over to you.
Excellent. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
Fantastic. So firstly, just to say thank you to each of you for joining this Hustings event and setting out your priorities. So thanks for being here. So Matt and Tom talked explicitly about speaking with candor. So to share some statistics which were published by Her Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary, black people are 9 times more likely to be stopped and searched than white people. Black people are 8 times more likely to be handcuffed despite being compliant. And black people are roughly 5.7 times more likely to have force used on them. So I guess one of the key recommendations from Her Majesty's Inspectorate was to provide officers and staff with the skills, principally through training, prevent unfair behaviour and combating unconscious bias. We know that many forces have stretched staff, backlogs for training, and not enough is being done. I guess my first question is, do you recognise those recommendations? And the second is, what would you specifically do to tackle that problem?
Okay, thanks, Joe. So recognition and action, I think, is the essence of that. We're going to start with Tom, followed by Sean, Jonathan, then Matt to finish off on this one. So Tom, you're going to kick off on this one.
Sure, thank you. And thanks for the question, Joe. To answer quite simply, of course, I acknowledge and recognise those statistics, and we see that in Hertfordshire. A recent study from Hertfordshire University has just backed that up and has said that young black men especially are more disproportionately likely to be stopped and searched than anyone else. As far as I'm concerned, I would be holding the Police and Crime Commission, the Chief Constable, to account to make sure that training is being delivered in a way that means it's being delivered efficiently and also being delivered on time. I think the other thing that I touched upon is that we need to make our police force both safe and also basically so that black people can feel like they can become police officers. And I think to do that, we must have a look at how vetting works, to make sure that we've got police officers there who are going to police in the right way, who are going to de-escalate when they should be de-escalating, and to make sure that our communities are served properly by the police, and reduce the amount of and reduce the instances where disproportionality happens to zero.
Okay.
And if we don't do that, then we are failing your community.
Okay, that's what Tom. Okay, thanks for that. Sean, you're next.
Thank you. Yes, absolutely. I recognise that for sure. So in answer to your question, action, I really want to explore how the stop and search scrutiny panel worked, for example, making sure that's as diverse as possible, involving people from the black community in that, because that is one element of policing that does disproportionately affect black people. We need to understand why and solve that issue. Secondly, I would like to see, and certainly explore the possibility, because I know other forces have done it, looking at independent ethics board. So making sure that the vetting procedures are correct, that we do get the right officers who adhere to the Nolan principles, and that the black community is treated fairly, and that we don't get ourselves into a situation where they are being disproportionately affected, because it's not acceptable. So I think as a PCC there are opportunities to do more work in that area, and those are 2 specific things I would look to do.
Okay, thank you, Sean. Jonathan?
Thank you. Yeah, I certainly recognise the issues that have been expressed, and the independent report that was commissioned by the current Police and Crime Commissioner on stop and search disproportionality is a really useful starting point in terms of the Hertfordshire specific context, because although there are certainly still real challenges in Hertfordshire, Hertfordshire does actually perform better than many other counties, and what that independent report found is that the disproportionality in stop and search was the lowest in Hertfordshire compared to the most similar group forces. So those are other police forces with comparable demographic areas to Hertfordshire. And actually what that report also showed is that young black women, for example, were far less likely to be stopped and searched than their white counterparts. So we absolutely must not be complacent, but actually there has been some positive progress made in Hertfordshire. The independent scrutiny panel set up by the current PCC I think is incredibly important. Others who've talked about making sure the diversity of that is correct are right. Certainly, getting more young people involved in that is really important to me. There's no one who currently sits on it under the age of 40, as I understand it, and that needs to be fixed.
Thank you. Finally, Matt, on that question.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I think it goes back to intrinsic beliefs, Joe. I think we need to build a representative force, one that represents the communities in which we try to serve and keep safe. I think it comes back down to prejudice and what that actually means, and it's a prejudgment, and that we actually all have prejudgments, and it's all right to have prejudgments, but it's actually to be comfortable exploring that and the inherent difficulties that come from that. I think there is a level of institutional training, subconscious training as to the issues that the police force actually have. And one of those is to do with race. You know, I joined the specials in 2000, just after the Stephen Lawrence inquiry, around that time where it was deemed as that the Met was, and I know that's the Met, was institutionally racist. So that coloured a lot of police officers, you know, their own identity of what they were joining as an organisation, moreover, how the public perceived them as well. And I think it's about exploring the optics as to how these stop and search and how it's seen and how it's received. And of course, to be able to scrutinise that. And I think education and training at a super deep level, at a sort of an intrinsic level, is probably one of the ways in which to combat this with the most traction, really.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you all for answering those questions. We're going to start with Sean with the next question. Marilyn, is that...
Yeah, so the next question will be Nick Brown, who has patiently had his hand up. So Nick, finally, over to you.
Thank you, Marilyn. I'd like to thank Clive for organising this, because it's been a really good event. And it's been really good to hear your various points of views on this, and quite reassuring, because I do think Hertfordshire Police are in denial of all sorts of things. Back in the day, when Jan Berry headed up the Police Federation, we were called into West Midlands Police to help out with some community engagement issues, and that's now an ACPO best practice case study on how to engage with local communities. And it is about community policing, and it is about trust. And if you don't have PCSOs on the street, there is no trust. I'm living Welling Garden City, just outside, and like someone said earlier, I can't remember the last time I saw a policeman on the street. You see them in cars, but you don't see them on the street. Okay, as a result of which, there is shoplifting. There are people riding around on motorcycles without helmets on, and it's not something you see once a week. It's something you see 10 times a day, every day. You have lost control of community policing in Hertfordshire. First point. Second point, I'm good friends with the next ACC on the mentoring point, and we talk a lot about this. The current management going on within Hertfordshire Police is exposing our frontline police officers to harm, and you know, that's really not good enough. So the questions I'd like to ask is, in terms of your management skills, because it's a very difficult thing to manage the kind of habits that have been built up in the police over the years, you know, particularly in the Met. How would you go about delivering accountability on these things? And secondly, would you be happy to have a conversation with me, whichever one of you who are elected, once you've been elected? But the accountability piece and the management of that seems to me to be key. I think that's a really difficult job to do.
Okay, thanks, Nick. I think we're over to you, Sean, and the floor is yours. You have a minute to try and respond to that.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. I'll start with the second one first, if you don't mind, Nick, and the answer is yes. Be more than happy to do so. Yeah, accountability. Firstly, I think it's important to have a good team around you, people that you trust. You're not going to be able to hold the whole of the force, and particularly the Chief Constable, to account all on your own. So you do have to have a good team behind you, people that you trust, to make sure that the police are doing what they should be doing. And yeah, I think that is very much the key to it, is making sure that you do have that team behind you, really. And I'd be looking to build a team that I trust, and also scrutiny, making sure that you ask the right questions, so that there's so that you scrutinize effectively. Effective scrutinization is important at all levels, but it's going to be ever so important when it comes to policing, because that can have serious impacts if you get it wrong. So scrutiny and having a good team behind you, in summary, would be my two.
Thanks, Sean. Jonathan, your answer to that question?
Thank you. Like Sean, very happy to have a chat post-election, Nick, if elected. I think there are a number of things just to highlight briefly, and a lot of my view is from having done exactly this kind of thing as a council leader and working with people doing the operational role day to day. The first thing is around transparency of accountability. If I'm elected, you will see the holding to account function of the PCC being done publicly, transparently, visibly to the community. That's good in terms of the public being able to see it, but it's also really helpful in terms of getting people to be straight with you. Because of course, if people don't quite give you a straight answer, you end up with other people saying, well, actually my experience was different. So transparency is really important. Setting clear expectations is critical as part of the culture. And it's about, on behalf of the public, being clear about what policing should look like in Hertfordshire, about the standards that are expected, and about the priorities for policing, and holding people to that every single day. And also, when we talk about priorities, sometimes important to say what aren't priorities as well. And the third thing is data, and making sure actually that there is a really good understanding and good use of data in terms of what's happening, what isn't happening, so you can measure progress on things. And I'm a great believer in things being measured, because generally speaking, what gets measured gets done.
Thank you. I think we're over to Matt and then Tom to finish.
Yes, Nick, you'll be busy. I'm more emphatically up for a meet up and to discuss and to learn. I think that's the key thing. I'm still learning, aren't we all? So in
we do a lot of work with the Royal Marines, by the way.
Oh, very good. Good. I can imagine. I think it's about 360, turning it around 360. So in terms of review and accountability, I would say that we need to be looking about understanding the management process from up and indeed down, and also inside out as well. So really get the understanding from the Joe public, and also understand what the police, members of the police officers actually are struggling with. And I think when you said about managing, for me, coming from a military point of view, I think it's driven mainly from leadership. There is a big difference between leadership and management. And I think leadership is born out of painting and sharing a vision. And I think process is really the thing that holds management together, and knowing when to go off piste and to allow those processes to be challenged and to give a little bit. But I think, as Jonathan said, it's about setting expectations, and I think very much about data as well. We've got to use data. You just can't go by the seat of your pants. When you take off in an aircraft, one of the first things you do is look over in your shoulder. You might understand where you're flying by virtue of the wind, but you only really understand that when you see the runway, and that informs the direction that you need to travel. So you can have all the mechanisms in place, but looking back at what we did and what went right and what went wrong, and that review, and open up that candid honesty, I think, and creating a culture of people to explore what they did right and wrong.
Okay, thanks very much for that. Finally, Tom.
Yeah, thanks, Clive, and thanks, Nick. Of course, I'd love to take you up on your offer. And throughout, this process and this election, I've been doing just that. I've been speaking to chairs of community safety partnerships, former police staff, former serving police officers, because you're people with the expertise and the knowledge that are needed to inform the work that we do. In terms of management style and accountability, I think there's a three-pronged approach here that my other counterparts have touched upon. The first is a management style, and mine is one that demands excellence. I'm not satisfied with the police doing okay because we're doing better than other forces. As far as I'm concerned, we have to be agile, and we have to make sure that our police force are generating excellence across, and where good work is being done, we're not just standing still, and that we're being creative in making sure that we are at the forefront of policing across our police force. And the only way to do this is data, is to have clear metrics from the chief constable and from the senior police team, and where we can clearly see that something is going wrong, being quick and agile in fixing that. But it is also about candor and trust. And as a police and crime commissioner, opening yourself up to public scrutiny and making sure that when the public are asking questions, when councillors are asking questions, that you're giving answers, you're giving clear and trustworthy answers, and not just saying, well, that's operational, that's not part of my, that's not what I'm doing, that's not part of my remit. And actually, you as a PCC, we can foster that trust in local communities, and that's what I would do if I'm your police and crime commissioner.
Thank you, Tom. We're at a junction where we did actually schedule this session to go on till 8:30. Clearly, there are a few more questions people want to ask. I have one or two questions myself I'd like to ask. What are your time? Have you got time to spend a bit more time answering the questions? Yeah, so see nods there. Okay, so yeah, Marilyn, so if we carry on with the questions.
Wonderful. So just in terms of, just so you can manage your expectations, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 more questions. I've possibly got one, Clive has got one, so we're probably going to say about half a dozen, Baker's dozen, give or take. And thank you for your time. So I think we're going to stay with on camera because Charlotte has a question. It's very similar to a question that Valerie has raised. So if Charlotte's question doesn't address that, then I'm going to cycle back to Valerie. But Charlotte, I know you said you wanted to come on camera with your question, so handing over to you.
Hi everyone. First of all, thank you Clive and team for hosting. It's been really good, and thanks all for your time. So I'm a councillor here in Watford, and one of the things I had to learn as a councillor is budgeting and how we're affected by government funding, etc. The cuts, everybody's experiencing it when they rely on government funding. We've heard a lot, which I don't agree with, about the amazing things that you would love to do, but with that means there are going to be difficult decisions to make alongside that. In an ideal world, we would have the money for absolutely everything, and I just wanted to bring it down to earth a little bit and understand what, in your eyes at the moment, where you would look to make savings, because there are going to have to be savings made if you'd want to come up with new things, unless the government wants to miraculously give us more money. So I'd love to know about the kind of savings that you would look to make, and kind of what would be the first to go in savings. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Charlotte. We're going around the houses again, so we're going to start with you again, Jonathan, this time. So savings.
Yeah, thank you. It's a really great question, because it's very, very easy for us all as candidates to sit here and say what we'd do more of, and so it's an important challenge. 3 things I want to highlight. First is value for money, and I've had experience of managing and overseeing multi-million-pound budgets, and the truth is you can always find savings. There is no organisation in the world that has achieved peak efficiency, and so actually it is just about the day-to-day rigour and discipline of scrutinising budgets, making sure everything that's being spent is actually a priority and not just the way we've always done it. So that actually day-to-day good management is incredibly important. The second is there's been some quite interesting work done by government around police productivity, looking at some of the processes and bureaucracy involved right throughout the criminal justice system, actually, not just policing, that actually takes a huge amount of time. Fixing some of that will release a huge amount of resources. And the third thing that I think is incredibly important is reducing demand, particularly for non-crime and policing functions, because there is a huge amount of demand that goes into a police control room that shouldn't really be there, if we're being really honest. And if we can work in partnership with other public services and get some of that demand back to the places it should be. I talked about mental health support earlier as a really good example where there's a lot of work to be done. Actually, that will free up resources that can either be used on savings, used on other things. And it is incredibly important because, yeah, as I said right at the beginning, we've got more police officers in Hertfordshire now than ever before. As one of my colleagues said, they are young in service, and they're only going to get more expensive as they go up the pay scale. So there is going to be a need year on year to free up money to protect those numbers.
But a minute, so shall we move on to the next person, Matt, to respond to that. Sorry.
Yeah, very much. Thank you. So in terms of, I think creative thinking is a good way out of this, and paying it forward. Those two key things there. It is a very complex situation. I actually had my financial briefing this afternoon from the Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner. But I think, yes, scrutiny is important. And I think creativity around thinking about how we can save money, such that we would ask this. Changing rather than saying we can't do this, changing the mentality we can if, and that if may be, well, working with other agencies collaboratively, utilising other services, as Jonathan said there, but also pushing back up the line to government to say, well, actually, you know, in the realms of mental health, that is not the best place for the police to get involved dealing with mental health, knowing that myself and my wife's experiences. You know, so much of police resources is wasted in that sense. And of course, the person at the end of the line with the mental health issue doesn't get the best outcome, doesn't get the best safety and the best result. So I think there's some creative thinking that has to come about here, and invest in the police force, pay it forward. The precepts should be right up the top as far as they can.
Okay, thank you. Tom.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I agree with Matt on that. I think that actually we need to make sure that we're paying the right amount for our police, not just a low amount because we're paying a low amount, but paying the right amount to make sure we have the resources for our police to deliver an effective policing service. The other thing that Matt touched upon is collaboration, and I believe that is absolutely key. I really think, and I know that from my perspective, I can deliver the things that I've talked to you about tonight and the things that you'll see on my leaflets because we do it in collaboration with district councils, with our local health services, with our partners in the private sector, and also our partners in the public sector as well. And we can do this when we're looking at value for money in procurement, in collaborations across forces and across local government, in staffing. And I've got experience in financial scrutiny in local government. I sit on the financial scrutiny committee at North Herts Council. And so I know I'm in a really good position to scrutinise our financials, to be able to wring the most out of what we've got, but then also be agile, know where the funding pots are, and create a Police and Crime Commissioner's office that is really good in identifying the funding that is coming from government that we have to fight for in, quite frankly, what is a ridiculous system, and make sure that we're getting those funding pots and putting them to places where they're being in the best use for our communities.
Thanks, Tom. Sean, to conclude on this.
Yeah, thanks. A really important question. What everyone said is absolutely right. Collaboration is key. And with active collaboration, you can take the stresses off, potentially take those financial stresses off of the police. But one thing that has been missed and hasn't been mentioned is when we look at the budget and we should look across all areas to see where savings can be made. And that includes the Police and Crime Commissioner's Office. We spend over, I think it's over 2 million on the Police and Crime Commission. It's a lot of money. So I do think when we look at that, we do need to look at it in its totality across all of it. And that includes that office. But yes, absolutely, collaboration is key. When it comes to looking at the budget also, are officers doing what they should be paid for, which is solving crime out on the streets? Are we making the right decisions if they're filling staff roles, for example? Should they be doing that? So we should be looking at things like that as well. And equally, which has already been mentioned, but it is an important role of the Police and Crime Commissioner, is lobbying government, making sure we are getting that adequate funding. So yeah, that's a answer from me.
Thank you, Sean. Marilyn, next question.
Okay, so our WACA audience are very busy tonight. They're still coming in, so I might have to squish another one in at the end. However, so our next question, this is from Valerie again. Thank you, Valerie. And Valerie, please let me know, have we answered the question that you posed about where is the funding coming from? I hope that we have, but let me know if you're happy with the answers and that we've covered the way that you phrased it. So Valerie has said, given that you have all heard each other's responses, what will be different in policing in Hertfordshire under your leadership?
Okay, so I think we're going to start with Matt on this one.
Thank you. My personal experience of just connecting with people, I think that's my unique offering, actually, above everything. We are humans. I think we, just looking at some of the questions, you know, understanding psychology, understanding we are all human beings, and a police force is a statutory thing. It's there to keep us safe. We rely on it. We need to build trust. I will open up the doors of it, you know, an exchanging conversation. I build that trust and work tenaciously and tirelessly to really understand what the communities want. And when I say what they want, as in what they want the police to change, how they want to see a police force. Yeah, I think it's we can get lost in detail. It's bringing it back to being humanistic around this. Yeah, it's about that engagement, being authentic, unapologetic. Yeah, I think that's what I would like to bring to it, and I would drive that as a point of leadership. You know, to change the language, to change the direction in which we're governing our police force.
Okay, Tom. Thanks, Matt. Tom, your answer?
Yeah, thank you for the question. It might sound slightly corny, but for me, it's in my party name, and that is cooperative. I truly believe that policing has to be cooperative, and with me as your police and crime commissioner, it will be. And for me, that means thinking creatively. That means engaging with local communities, having your voices not just in meets with me or with staff, but at the top levels where decisions are actually being made. It also means looking at the way that we do things. So with the police and crime plan, for example, looking at how we can incorporate local police and crime plans into the police and crime plan from the police and crime commissioner, from a grassroots up system rather than an overarching top down system. For me, I will be agile, I will be creative, I will hold our police to account, and I will do so cooperatively with the residents of Hertfordshire, with the community groups of Hertfordshire, and with our vibrant communities who deserve a police force that works for them.
Okay, thanks for that, Tom. Sean?
Yeah, thanks for your question. More community officers. I absolutely commit to that, and it is a choice. It doesn't have to be the way that we don't fill PCSO posts, for example. With me as your police and crime commissioner, you will see more community officers on our streets. And secondly, you will have a visible and active police and crime commissioner. I commit to county-wide surgeries, so you will see me and I will be a point of contact for communities. Just going back to the original part, community policing is absolutely central in preventing sector crime, but also building those relationships with communities such as yours. Under my leadership, you will see more community officers on your streets.
Thank you very much. Succinct and clear. Okay, Jonathan, you finally on this one.
Thank you. What you'll get with me is a tough on crime approach that aims to make Hertfordshire an even safer county. You'll get visibility and community engagement, and you will get a far more transparent and publicly accessible approach to holding the police to account that you can see, that you can be part of, and that you can feed into.
Thank you both. Next question, Marilyn.
So our next question, we've touched on this a little bit, but the question is, and this is from Andrea, says, how will the PCC hold the force to account to deliver the police race action plan, the PARP?
Okay, delivering the police race action plan. So Tom, I think you first.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I believe the police race action plan is extremely important. And one of the things that I would be doing, and it sort of goes to say, is actively holding the Chief Constable to account on this, making sure that the police race action plan is a part of conversations consistently that are happening across the force. Because the legitimacy and the effectiveness, it says in the action plan, is built on the relationships between the police and the public. And there is no way that the police can serve our public without the police race action plan being implemented, and being implemented in a way which benefits our communities. So for me, keeping the police race action plan consistently in the conversation, holding the chief constable to account, and making sure that we are talking about it, and that we're not just talking about it, that we're communicating with you about it, that we're listening to your thoughts on where we're going wrong, and that we're taking real action to make sure that you can see a real change in our police force.
Okay, thank you, Sean.
Yeah, thank you for that important question. Tom's absolutely right. It needs to be part of our everyday work as we go about our business as police and crime commissioners. But also the Race Inclusion Board, that needs to be accountable, and it's something that I intend to explore should I be elected. Is it working effectively, properly? Is it a board that is fit for purpose? And does it tie in with the police race action plan? So I would be keen to explore that and further enhance it if necessary to make sure that it works as efficiently and as effectively as possible.
Thank you. I think Jonathan, and then Matt.
Thank you. I think it's about being really rigorous in terms of tracking progress against delivery, and making sure that is being effectively scrutinised and is transparent. I think, for me, the real mark of success is that it becomes part of everyone's everyday. And I think one of the things I always worry about things like the Race Inclusion Board is that there's always a risk that it allows people to say it's someone else's problem. And I think that is, I don't think that's something we should accept, and we should be very mindful of. And I think it is about making sure that every single person in policing, whether they are the Police and Crime Commissioner, the Chief Constable, or a neighbourhood officer, or a member of police staff, is fully involved and takes responsibility for serving our Black community properly, fairly, and transparently. And so, yes, delivering on things like the race action plan is important, but actually long term, we need to make sure that it is just something that we do day in, day out for people.
Thank you. Matt, to conclude?
Yeah, all of the above, really. I think reviews, having honest appraisals, and indeed difficult conversations as part of that accountability with the Chief Constable and with the senior leadership team. I think it's about that, having that difficult conversation, keeping people to account, measure and scrutinise. I think it should really be in the forefront of everyone's mind, irrespective of race, because it's in the national spotlight. The country is looking upon the police force collective as a nation, and it's synonymous with policing now. It's to do with the racial aspect. And so we can't do anything but make sure that the police force respond to this and respond in a really positive way that makes it far better than it ever has been. So it's accountability and transparency is the key thing that I would be focusing on.
Okay. Thank you all for responding to that question. Next question, Marilyn.
Okay, so next question, I hope I pronounced it correctly. I think it's Leon. So Leon has said, is it possible to tell us a bit more about section 136, where individuals are taken into a place of safety? The police at the moment are stretched and are saying they do not want to wait around for the individual to be sectioned before they leave. Thus, they want to hand them over to mental health nurses and be on their way. And Leon would like to know what is being done about this and have your thoughts on that situation and scenario.
I presume that's more about what you would be seeking to do about that, if anything, since you are not yet in that role. So I think we're going to start with Sean on this one.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for the question. I've been involved in similar situations previously as when I worked in the police. It's an incredibly difficult situation. So for this to be successful and to make sure that the police aren't stretched in this sense, there needs to be really, really strong collaboration with other services, mental health services, social care services, and that collaborative work needs to start early on, because what happens at the moment is the police are put in situations which they're not adequately trained for, and then what those victims, because essentially most of the time they are victims, are put into places that are not best suited for their needs. And that's not acceptable. It's not acceptable for the person who's being detained, and it's not acceptable for the police either. So building up those strong relationships to make sure that the right agencies deal with people is absolutely important for both the victim and the police. So it's a really, really difficult situation, but it is something that impacts on the police and their resources like you would not believe. So we really need to get better at it and make sure that we solve this issue. And there's no easy answer to it. I have to be honest. It's
Thanks,
very,
Sean.
very difficult.
Thanks, Sean. Jonathan, Matt, and then Tom on this.
Yeah, thank you. It's a really important question, and there will always be some of these kinds of calls that require a police response where there is a genuine risk to life or to safety, but a very, very significant proportion of mental health calls into policing do not need a police response. And in many cases, as I said earlier, a police car turning up is the worst thing that could happen for that person in crisis. What we need to do about it is a national programme called Right to Care, Right to Person. It's been trialled in Humberside. And what that is an agreed programme between policing and health and social care to carefully transfer in different phases that demand where it should be into health and social care. That hasn't yet been rolled out in Hertfordshire. If I'm Police and Crime Commissioner, I will make it a priority to get that rolled out and to get the police and the NHS around the table to agree that. There's a number of phases that need to be looked at, starting with concern for welfare calls, people being AWOL from care. Looking at transport of patients can be a huge thing that police time gets put into, and then right up to the section 136 detention. So it needs to be done in a phased approach, but ultimately if we can get this right in Hertfordshire, it means people in mental health crisis getting the right care from the right people who are trained to do it, and it frees up a huge amount of police resources that can go into solving burglaries and tackling antisocial behaviour and much, much more. So it is actually a win-win, and it will be a real priority of mine to get it delivered.
Thanks, Jonathan. Matt, then Tom.
Following on swiftly from what Jonathan said there, really, the intervention. I don't actually think this is something that the police need to or should get too involved with. I think there should be probably another service that is required in this. Is it with health and social care? Is it with the police? Clearly, more training needs to be done in terms of mental health, but it seems to be a huge waste of resources. And as I and Jonathan have both touched on, a police car turning up is not going to help the situation. We need to de-escalate the problems that we see by way of mental health. And I would argue that police are probably not best trained or best placed to do that. So I think it really is about looking creatively at changing the resources and a government entity nationwide to be able to deal with this mental health. And I don't know what the answer is, in a 1 minute. And right now, without understanding, the challenges and the complications, I wouldn't be best suited to answer anymore.
Okay. Thank you very much. Tom, to finish off.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I echo what the others have said on this. It is about the right person turning up to a mental health crisis, and whether that is mental health professional, or in the cases where that's the police, it should be the right person and not just a police response as a standard. But what we also need is a culture of collaborative working from our police with our mental health trust, and both agencies working together in lockstep, really, to provide the care that's needed for our mental health patients. And for me, that means constant conversation with the Hertfordshire Partnership Trust, and making sure that where the police are called out, we're looking at why they've been called out and whether they needed to be called out, but also that actually we're not limiting, because if we do limit our time to an hour, like Hertfordshire have done, and then the police just leave a mental health patient in care, I see that as a real issue. We shouldn't have police waiting for 12, 16 hours with mental health patients as a standard. But also, if somebody needs that extra care and needs that police support should be there. It is a really delicate issue, and one that, you know, I think is going to take collaboration to really solve.
Thank you. Conscious of time. How many more questions have we got, Marilyn?
Well, there's possibly one from me and possibly one from you. So I will let you decide. Do we want to sneak ours in while we are here?
Yeah, you go for it. My question, I think, would lead them on to conclude. So I think go for your question. Yeah.
Wonderful. So actually, I've written mine out as well. So let me read it to you. Just make sure I cover everything I wanted to say. So and full disclosure, I'm currently a local councillor for Central Ward here in Watford. So the council and Lib Dem Council have helped to fund 300 CCTV cameras and help fund those who actually sit and monitor the cameras. So that helps make up a little bit of the shortfall of having less officers on the ground. However, we do need more of those outside of the town centre in some of those hotspot areas. So can we expect potentially some of your stretched budget to go towards things like CCTV, because even if you're not monitoring every single thing, we have found that the residents feel assured when they know that CCTV is in place. So that's my question. Thank you, Clive. Back over to you.
Thank you very much. And just to say that Marilyn is a member of Watford African Caribbean Association. She's not here as a councillor, but she's okay. So Jonathan, you want to kick off on this one? So yeah, CCTV cameras.
Yeah, I think CCTV can play an important role in both in terms of people's feelings of safety, but also helping helping the police deal with issues when they have occurred. To the best of my knowledge, there isn't a particular CCTV budget in the Police and Crime Commissioner's budget, and so it's certainly something that I'd be happy to look at, but I think it's quite difficult to make any firm commitments at this stage. Particularly given the question we've answered about where the savings are coming from. But my instinct is to work really closely with local councils on this sort of thing, having been a council leader myself, and very often actually partnership working is the solution in terms of funding these things. And I've certainly found that in the past in terms of if everyone chucks a bit in the pot, you can normally make something happen.
Thank you. Matt?
Yeah, I think investment in drones as well as CCTV is a good thing. It can really help both prevent and capture evidence, but moreover, act as a deterrent. I would really welcome neighbourhood watch schemes as well, and security services. Again, that big collaborative word, where we're working together to understand, patterns and reoffenders, and understand where to put resources. And just like Jonathan, I don't know enough about the finances on this to see what could be ilked out of a already diminishing pot to bolster that. But I think it is about working with councils, working with shops. We've touched on it this evening about shoplifting, and I think there's a demand and a desire for shopkeepers and companies, businesses alike to invest and to work alongside police forces and indeed security services to get on top of this growing problem.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you. Tom?
Yeah, thank you. And a great question. Collaboration on this issue is absolutely key. And I know there are district councils around the county that have seen real success with mobile CCTV units where they've been invested in deterring crime. And what I would like to see is more collaboration and more data sharing between the two, because this is where all of the kind of threads that we've touched on tonight all work together. We need more police on the ground because they're the people who gather the intelligence, and we get that intelligence-led policing that can then allow us to use mobile CCTV units that are owned by councils or potentially by the police into the places where they're most likely to catch people in the act of crime. And this, for me, this really links in to rural policing as well, which is something we haven't touched on tonight, because actually using mobile CCTV to deter crimes like fly tipping, which are an absolute detriment on communities, is absolutely key. Making sure that actually our rural teams have, as Matt says, have access to the correct drones and the correct technology in order to be able to catch offenders in the act is really key. And I think the way that we can do this is to work with district councils a lot of whom already have this technology at their disposal to get these assets into the right place to stop the criminality before it happens, or to catch it and to catch the perpetrators while they're committing the crimes.
Thank you, Tom. Sean?
Thanks. A direct answer to your question, I'll be happy to explore that, and I'll explain why. I think there needs to be more trust and needs to be given to local authorities. They're the ones who know their communities the best, generally speaking. And it sounds like you want you have a clear plan as what you'd like to do with money should you get it. My view is that local authorities should be provided with that funding up front to do as they see fit with that funding, rather than what it is at the moment, where they have to apply, go through a whole rigmarole, can take months up to a year to get any funding. If we want to prevent and deter crime, let's give more trust to local authorities, because they know what is needed for their communities.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, final question from me, and I think I will still go with the order, and then we'll ask you to conclude. If you were elected to this role, how do you propose to engage with and report back to us on the progress around your agenda? So I think we start with Matt here, and with Jonathan. So, Matt?
Yeah, I think it's about setting targets, really identifying what you want us, whoever is successful, what you want from the PCC and what you want from the police force itself. I think it's about defining the target and working with you to really see if that's achievable, and indeed managing expectation, and being brave and courageous in terms of trying to hit that target for you. And I think it's about setting up reviews that are very frequent, are thorough, and collaborative is a word we've used all night, but I think that's really the key thing. Really understanding the communities that we serve. That's fundamentally it. Drilling down really deep level to have some really honest conversations as to what the limitations are and what you think we need to improve on, and try and hit that target.
Okay, thank you very much. Tom?
Yeah, thanks. For me, it's making sure that you're heard, that you can see that we're taking actions, and those actions are visible to you, but also that as a police and crime commissioner, we're here for all the communities in Hertfordshire to hold to account. As I've said earlier, I will be here, I will be open. For me, coming tonight is not some election stunt that I do and then you never see me again. You know, I've committed to multi-faith panels, I've committed to increasing the reach of the police and crime panels around the county to make sure that voices are being heard, but also to come and sit down with you in informal settings to hear your experiences, what's going on, and to make sure that your voices are not just heard and then being talked about without you, but to make sure that your voices are there in the rooms when the decisions are being made.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Sean?
Yeah, we need to be actively involved in our communities so we can feed back to them, but they can also feed their concerns back to us. And we can look to address them as part of the priorities that we set out. Equally, we need to use every available tool to us to feed back on the progress we're making, whether that be through social media. I think the Police and Crime Commissioner's office needs to get better at that, for example, but also in every other format as well. But absolutely active involvement and engagement is with all our communities across the county is vital in feeding back that the good stuff that we will hopefully do after May.
Yeah, thank you. And Jonathan, final question to you.
Yeah, thank you. Agree with a lot of what's been said. I mean, the law requires the new Police and Crime Commissioner to produce their police and crime plan in their first year of office, and that is not something that is just kind of given from on high, from an ivory tower. In my view, that requires a massive engagement program over the coming months, with people right across our county of all walks of life, to really ensure that the priorities that are set for the police in that plan reflect people's priorities. And so that's what I will lead if I'm elected. It's then about reporting back and ensuring that there are really regular updates on what is happening, so that people can judge the Police and Crime Commissioner on progress being made, And then it's about being accessible and responsive, and that's how I am as a person. I'm always very happy to have a chat, always happy to have a call, always happy to understand people's experience and insights. And I think that's something that's just important in any role when you are representing the public, and so that's what I'm all about, and will make happen if I'm elected.
Thank you very much, all of you. So, Marilyn, have you got your hand up, or did you want to come in with something? Or
yes, I have got my hand up because there was a statement which I think is quite relevant, and it would be a really nice way to close off. And I did have a very final question from Andrew, which will be quick because it's going to be like a round robin. First question, Andrew says, is it possible to say where each of the candidates lives? As in, are you local to here? I know someone has St Albans in their strap line, so it's Matt, but she wants to know where people live. But I'm going to quickly read the statement first, and then Clive, I'll hand back to you for that final question. This statement was from Eunice, and I actually think it's quite relevant in terms of cultural differences. So Eunice said, I think the PCC need to understand that Black people are expressive, hence we communicate with our arms, and therefore when we have our arms and hands in the air when talking, it doesn't mean we are aggressive, and this can be achieved by engaging with the community, because I've had that happen to me before, labeled as an angry Black woman when I was just being quite expressive and explaining myself. So I think that was key. But Clive, I'll hand back over to you to moderate the where does everyone live in the country. And I just want to say thank you also to our WACA audience for your wonderful questions. Thank you also to the candidates for showing up, and thank you to Clive for organising this and running it so smoothly. So Clive, back to you.
okay, we do have a few final things to say in any event, but can you just say where do you each live in? I presume you all live in Hertfordshire. Where do you all live? One word, one town or district? Anybody can go first. Sorry.
Well, I'm London Colney, St Albans,
Okay.
and I rent.
Okay. Sean?
I think I'm the only one who's got my address on the ballot paper. I live in Baldock in North Hertfordshire.
Okay, Jonathan?
Hartsmere.
Okay, and Tom?
And I was born in and currently live in Stevenage.
All right, okay. What we're going to give the candidates an opportunity just to say their final words to you as to whatever, very briefly, and we're going to go in reverse order, and then I'll say a few words and we'll conclude. So we're going to start with you then, Sean, to just make your final submission.
Thank you, Clive, and I really enjoyed tonight, so thank you everyone for your questions. So if you want more community officers on your street, if you want more neighbourhood officers on your street, if you want a police force that is going to actively engage with your communities, to listen to your concerns, to prevent and detect crime and build those really important relationships, then a vote for me is what you'll get. That community policing is top of my priority list. We must do better at getting more police on the streets. I want a visible police force that engages with communities such as your own, and also looks to build those relationships with your Thrive youth work services, looks to engage in that, and looks to potentially fund it moving forward. So if you want a PCC who is all about community policing, engaging with every community, then please vote for me.
Okay, thank you, Sean. Tom?
Yeah, and to echo Sean, thank you very much to everyone tonight. It's been absolutely brilliant to be here, and I think it's the first time that all four candidates have actually been in the same space together, which has been really great as well. For me, it's all about being cooperative. It's about working with you, with all of our communities in Hertfordshire, to make sure that our police are able to do our jobs and keep Hertfordshire safe. And that for me is it. I will work with you. I will be open. I will make sure that your voices are in the room where the decisions are being made. And as I said before, I've got a 5-point plan. I'm going to tackle antisocial behaviour. I'm going to tackle drug crime. We're going to make sure that young people have the diversionary services then they need. We're going to make sure that rural crime and fly tipping is well and truly tackled. And we are going to make sure that violence against women and girls is not at the bottom of the list and is in the conversation every single day. If you elect me as your police and crime commissioner, you'll have somebody who's committed to tackling those issues, who's committed to doing the absolute best for our county and holding the police to account, so that we don't just have an adequate police force or a good police force. We have an excellent police force that serves you really well And if you like what I've said tonight, then please vote for me on May the 2nd. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom. Matt?
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for the questions. So I bring a strong desire and ability to facilitate dialogue and understanding among different communities. My track record of holding and working through conflict, along with my commitment to inclusivity, makes me well suited to address the pressing issues that face our community. Now, imagine this. I have a piece of paper. Now, at first glance, it just simply looks like a mundane piece of white paper. But if I roll it up and present to you, I show you a circle. But if I change my position or indeed my viewpoint, you might then see a rectangle. You have to go with me on this. But then if you change your position once more, then you may see a cylinder. Now, what's the significance of that metaphor? It's about recognizing that truth, like the paper, is multifaceted and subjective. Each perspective offers a unique insight, and it's only when we consider them all that we gain a complete understanding of the whole picture. So in essence, everyone's viewpoint holds a kernel of truth. And by embracing diverse perspectives, we can find common ground and collaborative towards collective satisfaction. So let's strive to see beyond our own perceptions and limitations, to acknowledge the validity of others' viewpoints and to work together in harmony. By embracing the richness of multiple truths, we can foster understanding, empathy, collaboration, paving the way for a more inclusive and harmonious community. So my diverse and challenging life experiences have shaped my character and my primary skill set, which is creative and critical thinking, complemented by a commitment to engage collaborative action. So in closing, I ask for your trust, your support, and indeed your vote. Together, let us build a safer, more inclusive Hertfordshire for generations to come. And thank you for your consideration and your time.
Thank you very much. And finally, Jonathan, to conclude.
Thank you very much. It's been really enjoyable being with you this evening. So thank you for organising and for your questions. And I think it's been excellent that we've had a really good discussion that's resulted in a fair degree of agreement and not a political slanging match that you so often see nationally. So that's been great. This election for me is all about building on the progress that's been made. We've got more police officers than ever before in Hertfordshire, and it's now important that we set the right priorities for them to ensure that we make Hertfordshire even safer. So with me, you'll get a focus on preventing crime, tackling high impact crimes, responsive neighbourhood policing, support for victims, a real approach to make sure our towns and our communities are safe places, and where we really listen to the public and ensure that we empower the police to tackle people's priorities. And I believe I have the right experience to allow me to hit the ground running and turn that plan into action for the community. A really clear and transparent approach to accountability, visibility and engagement from the Police and Crime Commissioner, and value for money in everything that's done.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Just to say a few final words from me. On Thursday of next week, there are two lots of elections taking place. There's the district council elections where you'll be electing your ward councillors, as well as the Police and Crime Commissioners election. Personally, as those of you who know me know, I'm always going to urge you all to vote and to encourage your family and friends to do exactly the same. I'm going to step back a bit and say that during the Brexit election, you may or may not remember this, but it's 72.2% of the electorate voted. Imagine what might have been the result had the other 27.8% of people who didn't vote had voted. And so some people tell me it don't make any difference voting, but I don't agree. I go as far as to say, and I'll share one other bit since we're in Watford. In the elections of 2019, the winning candidate in Watford got 26,421 votes. The non-voters amounted to 25,031, nearly as many as voted for the winning candidate. So I would say to people that whilst I won't, and I never do, tell people who they should or shouldn't vote for, if it is the case that you cannot stomach any single one of the candidates in any of the elections that you are going to encounter, at a minimum, I still say participate by, for example, I know there's a campaign saying you can spoil your paper. Because in the 2019 election I referred to, there were 263 spoiled papers. So in fact, they still get counted. Imagine if those 25,000 people had spoiled their paper, that would send a message that people aren't confident in the system, if nothing else. So the solution isn't to sit at home and say it doesn't matter. The solution is to do something, even if it's about ultimately. It's not what I'm going to do, but I'd say if you do nothing else, at least contribute in that kind of way. So what I would say to you in concluding, it's about us determining what the future policing is likely to be. It's a once in 4-year opportunity in this particular instance. So do use your vote. I believe, in fact, the elections for police and crime commissioners have generally been one of the more poorly elected elections. It may not be as much. Local elections are similar in a way. So actually, you might say our votes can be much more fundamental where the turnout is going to be low. So I recommend people don't stay at home. And if you've got a postal vote, then please use it. And of course, initially you have to make sure you register to vote. So hopefully everybody has done that. So my final words is vote, and I suspect people on this call will be voting, but make sure you encourage your family and friends to do exactly the same. So in concluding, I'd like to thank the candidates again. I hope you've got food for thought from the questions of engagement that has taken place, and that when you are elected, whoever is elected, you'll be able to reflect on what has happened tonight and actually look at how you might adjust whatever it is you're seeking to do to ensure that the issues that concern the diverse population that exists in Hertfordshire are not forgotten. And I sometimes say to people that a lot of people don't want to talk about issues of race. Issues of race remain very important because actually for too long, people have kind of skirted around it and not wanting to address the real challenges that exist where we have institutional discrimination, particularly racial discrimination. And the police, of course, as you all know, is not immune from that. So in concluded, thank you all. Thank you for all your questions. Thank you and good luck to all the candidates. And I would say that would be where we conclude tonight. So thank you all. Thanks again. And have a good evening.
Thank you, Clive, for all.
Thank you, Clive. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for all the questions. Take care.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Going easy on us.
Stop the recording, sorry. Let's